Demon Copperhead is a 2022 novel by Barbara Kingsolver. It was a co-recipient of the 2023 Pulitzer Prize for Fiction and won the 2023 Women's Prize for Fiction. Kingsolver was inspired by the Charles Dickens novel David Copperfield. While Kingsolver's novel is similarly about a boy who experiences poverty, Demon Copperhead is set in Appalachia and explores contemporary issues. The book follows the life of Damon Fields, nicknamed Demon Copperhead for his fiery red hair and defiant nature, as he comes of age amid poverty and the opioid epidemic in southern Appalachia. All right, so I just finished reading Demon Copperhead, which right off the bat is a fantastic novel, very unforgettable and a deeply immersive literary experience for me. Genuinely one of the best books I've ever read, ever in my life. I also believe it's like the first time I've read a book outside of my high school literature classes that was assigned. I feel like it's been a while since I read like an independent reading book. So honestly, what you don't get better than Demon Copperhead, to be honest. That's a very, very great book. It honestly, so of course it's adapted from David Copperfield, which is a book that I've really wanted to read for a very, very long time. I believe my mom gave me that book when I was maybe 12 or 13. But it's definitely a hard book to sort of approach and definitely get into. And so thank God we have a book like Demon Copperhead, which is a modern iteration of that book. And, it just completely changes the linguistics of it and the dialogues, and a lot more approachable, of course, and also a lot more relatable. Not that, I'm not involved in Appalachia or in the opioid epidemic, but from the lens of someone who's growing up in the early 2000s. But obviously from a much, much different setting, I thought it was very interesting. He gets hooked on drugs at a very young age, and he experiences a lot of things, Demon, prematurely. But yeah, Demon himself, I thought was a very remarkably realistic and compelling narrator. He's very sharp and observant, and he's both funny, but also at times heartbreakingly human, which to me, he offered a very powerful perspective on the events that, occur in the novel. He also sort of drew shades from Holden Caulfield. I feel like Holden Caulfield is one of my favorite literary characters to ever exist. And honestly, after reading Demon Copperhead, I think Demon might be one as well. Obviously, both of them are just such flawed humans. They're not perfect. Nobody is, but and they're no role models either, to be honest. They keep making a lot of dumb decisions here and there. But I really appreciate their perspective on the world and how they approach certain things. I know, I just found it very remarkable and interesting. Kingsolver, her portrayal of addiction is very raw and it's very nuanced. There are very vivid descriptions of the psychological and physical grip that drugs can have over someone. And so it very much sparked very deep empathy inside me for the characters in this novel, and of course in real life, people who actually struggle with drugs at a very young age. And sometimes it's involuntarily, Demon's mom, for example, literally dies towards the beginning of the novel due to an overdose. And so that already sort of sets the the plot. You could already sort of see, okay, the impact that's had on his life and what's going to come of that. I thought the supporting characters in this novel are very richly drawn. Each of them have sort of a, what does that say? Oh, sorry, I wrote this down. Each of them leave a dent in Demon's life, and they add emotional depth. But they also add, whether that comes in the form of love, through pain, through support, through betrayal. I would honestly say that every character in this book is more, I would say 90% of them at least are very morally unjust, in the sense that they're, I would say, bad people. I would even include Demon sort of on that list of bad guys, bad people. The only sort of redeeming characters that I could say in this book are probably June for sure. Because she cares about Demon and she cares about Emmy until she sort of goes missing. And of course, she adopted Emmy as well. But I would say June. I would say Tommy. To be honest, Tommy is like one hell of a savior. Giving Demon that job, like yeah, sort of like contract slash job as hey, work on these comic strips with me. He's such a savior, man. I kind of wish the novel sort of went down the route of him being like a devout Christian boy, because that's sort of what he was giving, like, oh, don't do drugs, they're bad for you, pray to the Lord. He really gave that sort of vibe. But yeah, I would say those two, honestly, June, Tommy. And then I guess sort of Angus as well, and you sort of see the spark in the relationship between Demon and Angus at the very end of the novel. I don't know if I'd say coach, because obviously, he embezzles money and he's with drugs. Even though he has a great heart, there's other stuff to him that makes him flawed. So, yeah, as you can see, there's very, very few characters you can really look up to. A lot of them are just downright horrendous. Like, there are vile characters in this book, and the author does not hold back punches on displaying them. Some of them don't have any redemption arcs, Another thing that I really loved, so the language is written in consistent Appalachian dialect. And so overall, of course, that made it a very authentic and immersive setting. I thought it was very unique when I was reading like the short synopsis on the book cover page, when you like turn the cover. When I was reading that bit of a synopsis, I thought it was very unique. I was actually kind of concerned because like Appalachian, I'm not too familiar with that. Like I thought I was like, oh man, this is gonna be like very hard for me to digest. Like not in the sense that, the themes are gonna be too big for me to handle, but just like I might not understand, sort of the context of this setting. But the author did a tremendous job sort of describing the layout, and by the end of the book, you really feel like you know all the characters. So yeah, it was incredibly immersive, and honestly, just so poetic and rich in images. Overall, of course, the themes, like I mentioned before, they're emotionally heavy, but they're also powerfully told. There are themes of loss, of resilience, of identity, and they go through all of these themes. Barbara Kingsolver goes through all of these themes without being too overly sentimental. There's not that much room for the characters in this novel to like really grieve, they have to like sort of pick themselves up on their feet and just keep moving, whether that means they're going in a decline or an incline. They just have to keep moving. And so yeah, obviously the book has lots of like intense moments. Okay, and then I would say if I had to point out like one flaw, it would be very, very minimal, to be honest, because I think this book's a masterpiece. But if I had to point something out, I think the ending was maybe a bit too neatly wrapped up for the reality of the addiction crisis that the author is trying to portray. I thought with Demon, of course, a lot of supporting characters, like I believe Emmy, she's going through like a rehab. I think to be honest, she's like the only character that's sort of going through a recovery process. I'm pretty sure Maggot is living with a boyfriend, so I'm pretty sure he has a job with his mom now, so they have that connection. So yeah, I mean, I guess it was really just that like a lot of them sort of have somewhat pretty highly good endings. I don't know, like even Demon himself, he got reached out by a publisher from New York when he made those comics online, saying, "Hey, I would love to publish your works. We could create a book." That was like holy crap, and that happened within a chapter, I'm pretty sure, or like 1 or 2 chapters. So it all happened pretty quickly. So yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a bit too neatly wrapped up. But yeah, I mean, of course, that didn't diminish the overall impact of the story. Yeah, and then, of course, I highly recommend Demon Copperhead for those that are seeking deep, character-driven fiction. I think character-driven fiction is like the best genre for me, in my opinion, for literary works. I just love that. Of course, I mentioned before Catcher in the Rye, Holden Caulfield, one of my favorite books of all time. So I saw a lot of similarities with that in Demon Copperhead. But yeah, honestly, I just have to end this by saying that Barbara Kingsolver is a literary master, and this novel stands as a testament to her talent of blending social commentary with deeply human storytelling. I wrote that down. But yeah, Barbara Kingsolver, what an amazing author. I have to check what else she's written, but overall, this was an incredible, incredible book, an incredible experience. I'm going to give Demon Copperhead a 10 out of 10. True, true masterpiece. That's about it. Hope you enjoyed. See ya.